Self-organization in a voltage-driven non-equilibrium system, consisting of conducting beads immersed in a viscous medium, gives rise to a dynamic tree structure that exhibits worm-like motion. The complex motion of the beads driven by the applied field, the dipole-dipole interaction between the beads and the hydrodynamic flow of the viscous medium results in a time evolution of the tree structure towards states of lower resistance or higher dissipation, and thus higher rates of entropy production. Thus emerges a remarkably organism-like energy-seeking behavior. The dynamic tree structure draws the energy needed to form and maintain its structure, moves to positions at which it receives more energy, and avoids conditions that lower available energy. It also is able to restore its structure when damaged. For example, it is self-healing. The emergence of energy-seeking behavior in a non-living complex system that is extremely simple in its construct is unexpected. Along with the property of self-healing, this system, in a rudimentary way, exhibits properties that are analogous to those we observe in living organisms. Thermodynamically, the observed diverse behavior can be characterized as end-directed evolution to states of higher rates of entropy production. That's right, I'm back on my bullshit. We're doing a sequel to the worm video because I found my footage, baby! Okay, so let's start off with this. When I made the original worm video, I was a different person, with different priorities. For one, I try to make my videos shorter now. Ironically, I've also increased my attention to detail, probably because I'm taking it slower now. I've gotten this far into the video without mentioning Elden Ring even once this time. Flipping the script! Science first, game in the background. Number 2. A lot of people came away from my worm video liking it, but not really understanding what I was getting at, requiring me clarify in the description, which is a fundamental problem with the video. It lacks the focus to ensure everyone is on the same page. I don't plan on making that mistake this time. Behold, the graphics I have prepared for us today. I hope you're excited. I know I am. Let's start with these squiggly little guys. These are DNA origami building blocks made of staples and backbones programmed to form a predetermined macrostructure. That's right, you can use DNA to make just about anything if you sequence it cleverly enough. This is how they made molecular-sized things like smiley faces or the Mona Lisa, if you've heard about that sort of thing. Let's just watch as they recruit more wiggly little worms and agglomerate into big ol' wiggly morass. Ah, satisfying. Just like Legos. Ah, you'd love to see it. Yeah. Build that structure, little worm guys. You can do it. Where was I? Oh, right. Self-assembly and self-healing. Hallmarks of even the most basic types of life and rendered so simply. Almost like the worm trees. So about those worms, let's really open this can of them, shall we? Entropy production. You're doing it right now. Yes, you. The one watching the video. This video? You're dissipating heat right now. Probably also moisture, and both of those are producing entropy. You are alive. You produce entropy. So what does that really mean? Let's try not to get too granular and keep it at S equals KB ln of W, or omega, the microstates expression of entropy proposed by Boltzmann. W, or omega, is basically the total count of the number of possible configurations something can have. The more possibilities, the higher W, the higher S, and the more thermodynamically likely. This is because of Gibbs free energy, which I won't go into further than saying it scales negatively with T delta S, meaning systems become more stable at higher states of both entropy and temperature. You might be noticing entropy and temperature come up a lot in the same breath. This is why. Higher temperature states increase the influence of entropy, and entropy can produce heat, raising the temperature. You might have heard of the heat death of the universe. This would be why. Entropy is largely considered universally irreversible, meaning that even if you make it locally decrease, it will have a net increase on the world. One of the only things that seems to violate that, even if just locally, is the existence of life itself, which somehow produces entropy to lower the net entropy of the system and create emergent order as a result. That talk would get way into the weeds talking about the difference between entropy flow and entropy production and is worth graduate level study. So I'm going to leave it at, you can use the stones to destroy the stones, as Thanos put it. In other words, the propensity to seek more diverse states result in a local increase of order when living beings are involved. Entropy is purity's enemy. Remember that for later. So let's talk about the worm trees and what they seek. First, I'm going to have to differentiate which worm trees I'm even talking about. So let's start with the Wormfaces and work our way back to the first video's warden trees. Wormfaces seem to have one goal, and it's to plant their faces in the ground back where they belong. They're like great uprooted trees, unable to maximize their entropy and seek the sunlight, so they hunch over in groups or alone and gaze longingly at the ground they should be planted in. Some of them, like that one behind me, is slamming their head into the ground, are clearly trying their hardest to make that a reality. So why are these trees capable of emitting death blight, which grows thorny brambles through its victims, impaling them to death? Why? Because of the Scadutree, of course. What? Did you think I was going to go for the low-hanging fruit and say Godwin? Give me a break. Better lore analysts than me have gone to the ends of the world and back over that guy. Let's just pretend he's a big useless mermaid in this talk and ignore his existence. The Shadutree's blessing turned into a curse as its gold was sapped by the Erd Tree, colonizing its way into the very structure, causing it to bleed gold that was once its proud claim, before the lands were shadowed by the loss of their light. This is approaching discussion of the Kabbalah, specifically the Sephirot and Qliphoth. Above, the Sephirot bask in the light and are considered the fruits of the Tree of Life. Below, the brambles of the Qliphoth snake through the roots of the tree, with 10 knots to match the 10 fruits of the tree above, the tree of knowledge, as it were. As above, so below. This is fundamental not just to alchemy, but to our physical world, given fractal geometry exists between the cosmos and the neurons in your head. But I'm getting sidetracked. What does this have to do with the worms? Life, death, and the cycle between them, one feeding into the other, roots shrouded in darkness sending nourishment to leaves which then seek the light. So if we think of the Erd Tree as the tree of life and the Shadutree as the tree of knowledge, what if the Shadutree was originally resplendent with life before it was taken by the Erd Tree? Ancient Shadutree worship included spirals which reached the heavens, an echo of the tree that once sought to do the same before it was tapped and sapped dry by an intrusion known as the Erd Tree. Once depleted of gold, all the Shadutree had left were impenetrable thorns and gnarled branches, squeezed dry. In this way, it mirrors the Wormfaces and even Meteor when it comes slamming its face into the ground, as if it's seeking that former glory again of being planted in fertile soil and seeking the sun. Even simulacra gain a modicum of sympathy. So, if the Shadutree is an example of what it looks like when a tree is robbed of its energy, what does a living tree look like? Well, it might look like the source of many trees in the lands between. The great jars, filled with the flesh of sacrificed shamans. And where do we find these great jars, especially the greatest of them all? Why, of course, right at the end of a pathway guarded by worm guys and giant war golems. Life, imbued into organic matter in the simplest possible way, harnessed to keep watch over important repositories of more life, be they evergails or great jars. I say imbued because these trees do not seek, they merely wiggle. They are at their peak of entropy production, fully grown. They have all the energy they need, possibly more than that given some of them explode. Also note, as you've probably already noticed, the giant fucking bear right next to the warden trees leading down to a graven school. A bear which is undergoing the process of becoming a dragon, right next to a graven school, which is just a massive lump of life imbued into an inorganic mass using the primordial current. Is it really that far-fetched to imagine that these worms are one of the most fundamental ways to demonstrate life when there is stone dragons, jars and great jars, and graven schools exist? And all in the same place, as if we're meant to take away a theme from this. This is why I felt compelled to revisit the worm guys. One last time. Let's bring the science back in. Looking again at the video of the beads and oil, we can see a moment where the tree-like structure is formed and begins to wave in an electrodynamic breeze. This allows it to maximize entropy, as it's capable of forming shapes that can dissipate using two types of connections: straight-on connections, which only connect two other beads and have a lot of freedom to wiggle around, and branching connections, where usually three beads connect to the same part of the tree, all of them contributing in their own way by maximizing the combination of free outgrowths and branching nodes. I'm sure this has something to do with the 2 fingers and the 3 fingers, but I'll be damned if I can figure it out. It was also found that at greater tree lengths, branching began to be more preferred, mirroring how trees start as spindly little saplings before growing and spreading out. Looking at the video of the confined tree, I hope, demonstrates most clearly the sort of behavior I'm trying to describe in the warden trees, though. Wiggling, seeking an energy source or pointed directly towards it, using the same energy they were imbued with down to resembling rings of light when they get going. Hopefully it's become clearer why I say that the trees are at least symbolic of, if not fractal with, what remains of Miquella's flesh, given their association with the great jars and Miquella's distinct lack of flesh, while the warden trees guard everywhere he might seek to leave guards. They gain their energy from this resonance with their energy source, presiding over the golden lineage's greatest sources of shame as if on an eternal watch. These would normally form trees when unconstrained, but when constrained, trees are doomed to become but lowly worms. Or perhaps the trees were just worms all along, planted face first in the ground. All I know is that serpents and trees are blasphemous for a reason, and more than the obvious Garden of Eden references at that. They hide a secret behind how one is made from the other. If enough worms got together, do you think they could make an Erd tree? Could the 2 fingers and 3 fingers be manifestations of this quantum tree model, representing straight boughs and branching paths? I'm not certain, but I do know for sure that the worms are connected to the trees the same way the thorns are connected to the Scadutree, as a mark of their origin. The Scadutree only became thorny after it was drained of gold and abandoned, from the impenetrable thorn sorcery whose description marks it as a formerly faith-based incantation. Sorcery of those who abandoned the practice of incantations after devout faith rewarded them with only despair. The caster wounds their own flesh using impenetrable thorns grown from the Scadutree, which then sprout from the earth. This sorcery can be used repeatedly. The image of the twisted Scadutree is an edict. Denounce their ways, do them harm, for they have abandoned us. In this way, the Scadutree is representing the Tree of Knowledge yet again, being the unseen roots of the Tree of Life above it, nourishing it without ever seeing the sun. Imagine, if you will, a tree planted in the trunk of another tree, such that its roots sap the lower tree of all its nutrients. It shouldn't be hard to imagine, given the image of the Scadutree being impaled from above. All the answers fall into place if that's the Erd tree, don't they? The Erd tree's war against the horn scent, the gnarled and twisted form of the Scadutree representing something far removed from order, the spiteful thorns reaching up from beneath the earth to grasp at bearers of grace. All of that speaks to a system that was starved of its driving force by an interloper. Would it then be so surprising that Marika used the blasphemous serpent Eglay to steal this gold for herself? It wasn't until the Elden Beast arrived that order would be introduced to gold, after all, and Mesmer is proof enough that Marika consorted with the serpent. How fitting that exploring the world above is abundant with life, but only by venturing into the shadows beneath can we find any true knowledge. As above, so below. Why would Marika want to hide her dalliance with the serpent? Same reason why any ruler erases the path they took to power, to prevent anyone from following in their steps. Just like Miquella, incidentally, who follows the same steps in order to temporarily usurp godhood from Marika by taking Radahn as a consort. Rykard, ironically enough, would be the next closest of any of Marika's children to come to following in her footsteps. See? I brought it back around. Bet she thought I was just riffing when I called the Blasphemous Blade foreshadowing. You know, with this knowledge, one could devour the very gods. No wonder old Hornset Grandam calls her a wanton or rotten strumpet, and her progeny is vile for her having consorted with it. In particular, she seems aware of Mesmer's true nature and is personally invested in whether or not he yet lives, her dialogue changing after his death the same as it does for the divine beast. For one who holds the gods in the highest regard, nothing could be more blasphemous than usurpation, not to mention the divine gate is built atop a literal pile of dead horn scent. The ground beneath the Tree of Life was fertilized with the corpses of those who climbed to the very top of the world below, and its god was created by an unholy ritual involving the serpent. Come to think of it, I referred to it as Egle before, but it could easily take on a new name for each shedding for all I know, but that's neither here nor there. How fitting that a serpent allowed Marika to climb up from beneath into the lands between, and as a god no less. Before becoming her consort meant becoming Elden Lord, she was a Newman, a shaman from a land from which shamans rarely escaped. I would say it's unclear how she interacted with the serpent, but she for certain bore a child with it and walked with that child through the gate, and that child was almost certainly Mesmer. How fitting that Marika would burn the bridge behind her and bury the past, knowing it contains the knowledge as to how to become a living god like herself. No wonder flames are the only way to banish the impenetrable thorns, given she used to welcome its practice during the days of Mesmer's crusade, in order to fight the forces of the Hornscent. No wonder she made blessings specifically for him, as neither the light of the silvery moon nor of the golden sun could grant him succor. All that could have nourished him was instinctively burned away by the serpent living inside of him, Marika's greatest shame, literally covered up by one of her runes. While horns might diminish your connection to the Erdtree by way of affinity for the crucible in the Scadutree, there is nothing more repulsive to its influence than a serpent of flame which would burn away any branches extended in aid. For the sin of blaspheming against the gods, you are forbidden from being nourished by their nectar. How fitting. This is truly what it means to sin. I guess if I had to sum up what it was that made this second video worth making, it would be to emphasize that trees are really fucking weird, okay? Especially if a tree is synonymous with a god the way it is with the Erdtree and the god Marika. She's obviously made of charcoal by the time we reach her. Accordingly so, considering we set fire to the tree she's linked to. To reluctantly quote Richard Feynman, trees grow out of the air. They are a being made of carbon like us, grow from the carbon dioxide they absorb rather than anything they take out of the ground. And aspens? Oh, they're basically like fungi, connected down to the root networks. Tubes all the way down. And Elden Ring? Lousy with aspen trees in Leyendell. I wonder why. Either way, the trees of life and knowledge are undeniably at the center of Elden Ring, and between the number of Sephiroth and Klippo, as well as the connections between them, they reach the total number of 64, which is the number of bits they should have used when coding Elden Ring. That's right, my final word is to make a low-poly Elden Ring, because it would have been more thematically appropriate. Your move, Miyazaki and Martin. Thank you for getting this far in the video. I don't know what came over me. I just felt compelled to make this wrap-up video. Felt like it didn't get everything out with that first worm video, and I really needed to emphasize the tree part. Also, I didn't go into the omens and how the omens basically are growing horns out of their heads the same way that the worm trees have roots growing out of their heads, because that just kind of seems pretty straightforward to me. So I'm just going to move on. Thank you to everyone who donated to my Ko-Fi and to my GoFundMe, which are in the description. And once again, thank you for getting this far into a video about the science of Elden Ring. Specifically the quantum science of Elden Ring. It's very interesting when life gets pared down to the barest numbers. What happens? And it looks like with life, one of the simplest forms is a worm. I'm not going to touch on the Gnosticism. Let's just say everyone is made of worms. You're made of tubulin. The trees are also made of worms. Everything's a worm. Is what you should understand from this. So, you know, it's really not that big a deal to be a serpent, if you think about it. 'Cause, I mean, that's just a type of worm, really. Thank you for getting this far into the video. And as a show of my gratitude... Oh god, worm bomb! Sorry about that. As a show of my gratitude, I just wanted to say thank you for watching these videos and going on this journey with me. Thank you for caring enough that I actually felt like making another video instead of just abandoning the project in my depression. And here, have some Donkey Kong to roll you out. I hope you have a good night. Drink some water.